How is everybody doing? Welcome to yet another edition of the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge, presented by Georgia Alabama Sports Live. I'm so glad to be here on this Monday, like I always do here on the show. I try to go an hour. Normally, I have my college football reaction show, and then I have my NFL reaction show, but I'm coming to you here on a Monday because we've got a lot to cover. This is going to go the full hour. Don't forget, you can catch an episode on WQEE 99.1 FM, The Key, out of Noonan, Georgia. I am on that radio station Monday through Friday from 2 to 3. You can also catch this episode on Georgia Alabama Sports Live's Facebook page and YouTube channel every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And I'm also looking for sponsors. I'm looking for advertisement. As you can see, I will put your graphic down below in the lower thirds, and you'll be able to get some advertisement. And I will also shoot a 30-second commercial at your place of business. So if you are interested in being a sponsor, just message me. We have some fantastic sponsors for Georgia Alabama Sports Live. I will make sure just to give them some loves and some shout outs, like Pepsi, from those nice folks from Buffalo Rock. We want to thank Glenn Smith Chevrolet GMC. We've got Gordy Eye Care. We've got Chattahoochee Valley Community College. We've got Zaxby's. And we're just excited about our sponsors for Georgia Alabama Sports Live. But as I do my show, The Sports Beat, I've been doing this show for about 4.5 years now. I would love to get some sponsors, just exclusively Sports Beat sponsors, because it's really unique, and you'll end up growing your brand. And I will work for you. I'll make sure that your advertisement gets put up here. And I'm just excited about what's to come as far as everything that's been going on as far as the world of sports. And I want to serve the Columbus community. I think that it's very important that we have coverage here in the Columbus area. One of the things that I've always enjoyed about being in Columbus, I've been here for about 10 years now, is that there's just a lot of local stories to tell. And that's why I started this podcast, because I wanted it to center it to the city of Columbus. A lot to get into. I'm going to try to dive into all of it on the show tomorrow. I'm going to recap everything that happened in week 10 of high school football. You won't get any high school coverage here on this show because, I only have an hour, and it would take into 2 hours to cover everything. If you missed the Georgia Alabama Sports Live show that Thrip Behringer and I did last night, a huge success. We got a lot of views, wildly popular. I enjoyed doing that as well. It was just a lot of fun. Let's not waste any time. Let's go ahead, and we're going to start with college football first, and then we're going to take a break, and then we're going to go into the NFL. Later on in the show, if we have time, I will talk about some of the local stuff, including the River Dragons getting 2 wins over Monroe. Columbus State Soccer ends up winning again, and I will try to get into those. But if we don't have time in the show, I'll get them on tomorrow's show. Without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about the game that I stayed up and I watched. And I was very impressed with the Georgia Bulldogs, even though I wasn't impressed with Carson Beck. I was very impressed with how Georgia came out and punched Texas in the mouth. And I'm not kidding. they punched them in the mouth. And one of the things about the Georgia Bulldogs is this was a welcoming party to the SEC for the Texas Longhorns. My thoughts on this game was that Georgia's defense dominated in every way possible. You had Javon Walker with 3 sacks. You had Michael Williams with some big plays. The Georgia defense really, it rattled Quinn Ewers. Texas could not run the ball. I mean, that was a shocker. And then Coach Sark decided to put in Arch Manning because he wanted to change things up because Quinn Ewers was getting rattled and Georgia had great field position. They were able to score, put up 23 points in that first half. And then all of a sudden, Texas did make the adjustments. Quinn Ewers gets thrown back into the game for the second half. They get that touchdown to go down 23-8. And you could start to feel the momentum shift in Austin. And my thoughts on this was that Texas was starting to build some of the momentum, but Georgia started getting a little conservative. They give the football back to Texas. There was just some back and forth going on here in the game. And one thing about Georgia was they were resilient. Here is the play that everybody's talking about. Carson Beck throws an interception. The DB for Texas brings it all the way into the red zone, and the place is just going nuts. Then we end up seeing a flag, and then the refs call pass interference. They bring it back. Huge play in the game because I thought this could have been a big momentum shifter. Fans didn't like it too well. They started throwing water bottles on the field, and my thoughts were just running wild in this game. I'm thinking, are you kidding me? And my first reaction was that the refs, based off of the fans throwing the water bottles, had some time to think about this. Was it PI? Was it not PI? Why'd you throw the flag in the first place? The refs end up picking up the flag. There's no pass interference. Texas scores a touchdown. It's now 23-15. It's now a one-score game. And I'm thinking to myself, well, if you're a fan in the stands, if you don't like the call, you could just throw anything on the field and you'll get your way. It looked like that on the TV, that the fans were getting their way in this game. But Georgia, a long drive, they were resilient, and they go up 30-15. And that was the ball game. This was a huge win for the Georgia Bulldogs because now I believe that Georgia is going to make the college football playoff. There's no question about it that Georgia is going to make the college football playoff. And I think that Texas is still going to make the college football playoff too. And later on in the show, I'm going to have my college football playoff projections like I always do every Monday. It changes a little bit. I love having fun with this. You know, in a couple of weeks, we are going to have the college football selection show. And this is going to be amazing. And this was a huge win for Georgia. Now, Georgia goes on a bye. And then they will take on Florida in 2 weeks, the annual Georgia-Florida game. They don't call it the cocktail party anymore, and I'm okay with that. This is going to be a game where Georgia is going to have to watch out. They're going to have to see and scan the field and know that Florida is getting better. I will get into Florida and their win over Kentucky. And Florida is going to throw the kitchen sink at Georgia. And I always seen Georgia-Florida games, which I have plenty of time to cover this game. I've always seen Georgia-Florida games as kind of crazy. Like crazy things happen in the Georgia-Florida game. I can't explain 2002 why Georgia lost to an unranked Florida team, but it did happen. And so I will get into that. So much to get into, but congratulations. Kirby Smart, by the way, getting his 100th win. That is the fastest of any SEC coach. That's even faster than Nick Saban. See, Kirby Smart, when he came on the scene in Georgia in 2016, there was a divided fan base. There was fans that were like, well, we like Mark Richt. He's a good coach. You know, and he is what he was. He was a 9, 10 win coach that would go to a New Year's bowl game. That's what Mark Richt was. And when you get Kirby Smart, you get a disciple of Nick Saban. You get the defensive coordinator that's been by Nick Saban's side from the beginning, from 2007 to 2015. Nick Saban and Kirby Smart were side by side, and they were just a dynamic duo. And that's why Alabama's defense was as dominant as they were for a decade. Well, I'm here to tell you that when you look at Georgia and the culture, what Kirby Smart has built, they are still on top in the SEC. And the only team that really has been their Achilles heel is Alabama. Alabama has beaten them 3 times since 2021. Georgia's last loss to a team that was not named Alabama was Florida in 2020. That was the COVID year. That was when Kyle Pitts just went off on the Georgia Bulldogs. I didn't feel like this game, that Georgia would lose this game to Texas. A lot of critics, including everybody on the panel for College Game Day, picked Texas. Texas was a favorite. That was the first time that Georgia was an underdog in a game since Clemson in the beginning of the 2021 season, when they would go on to win the national championship. Georgia's still great. Texas has got some things to figure out. They got a tough one. They play at Vandy, and Vanderbilt is ranked. They are 5-2. I know I spent a lot of time talking about this Georgia-Texas game. I wanted to start out the show talking about the Georgia-Texas game, but I also want to talk about Tennessee-Alabama, because all of a sudden, Tennessee has beaten Alabama 2 out of the last 3 years, 2 times in a row in Knoxville. And, when I thought about this game, because I thought really long and hard about, Alabama scoring first. I thought that they would make the adjustments. Alabama fans have been restless. They feel that they're just not the same team, that Kalen DeBoer is not the same coach. And my thoughts on Alabama losing this game. By the way, Alabama, first time since 2010 that they have been ranked 15th. I mean, they have dropped down to 15 in the AP poll. They haven't done that since they lost their 3rd game in 2010, when Auburn and Cam Newton came back on them. And so this is unfamiliar territory for Alabama fans. Look, you've been spoiled ever since Nick Saban got there. And Kalen DeBoer, you're ready to get rid of him. There's Alabama fans that are calling for him to get fired right now. That is not the way to go. I'm not going to say, are you kidding me? Because I think that Kalen DeBoer is a good coach. He's just not Nick Saban. You get what I'm saying here? That you are ready to get rid of him, but he is still a good coach. It's just that the balance of power has kind of equaled in this new college football. In Alabama, I'm sorry, they can't get every single 4- and 5-star recruit and win a national championship every year. That was the standard at Alabama under Nick Saban, but that's not the case anymore. Let's talk about this game, because I thought that Jalen Milroe played ordinary. I don't think it's too early to bench Jalen Milroe. He's still a very spectacular quarterback. I think that he's no longer in the race for winning the Heisman. You throw 2 interceptions, I don't care who you are. I don't think Jalen Milroe is going to win the Heisman. Alabama did jump up in this game, and Tennessee looked awful in that first half, but it was that defense that kept Tennessee in the game. They only trailed 7-0 at the half, and then all of a sudden Tennessee's run game got going with Dylan Sampson and 2 rushing touchdowns. This was a back and forth game. Alabama took the 17-14 lead. Tennessee ends up getting a big touchdown pass from Nico Iamaleava to Chris Brazzell, and the rest is history. Tennessee's defense stops Alabama. You know what's going in the back of my mind? When Tennessee took the lead 21-17 and Alabama had 5 minutes left to go, I'm like, oh yeah, Alabama's got this. Jalen Milroe's going to march down the field, and Alabama's going to score the go-ahead touchdown, and they could possibly win this game. When Tennessee's defense stepped up twice on Alabama, remember, Alabama had all 3 of their timeouts. I did not agree with Alabama going for it on that 4th and 22. That was a terrible call by Kalen DeBoer. And still, even with that, They burned all three of their timeouts. Tennessee kicks the field goal. Alabama's got another shot to at least tie it. And then Jalen Milroe throws that interception. And Tennessee is in great shape right now. I'll talk about the AP poll. I'll talk about where I see these two teams in the college football playoff projection. But I don't think Alabama's going to make the college football playoff. They still have a very tough schedule at LSU. That's your third loss right there. Alabama has not had 3 losses in a season since 2010. There's a possibility Alabama could have 4 losses. That hasn't happened since Nick Saban's first year in 2007. And I was looking at the history of Alabama coaches in the past couple of years. Nick Saban, his last 3 seasons, lost 2 games every year. But there was a stretch from 2010 to 2017 when they won that 4th national championship with Tua Tagovailoa. 2010, they win a championship in 2009. 2010, they have 3 losses, which Alabama fans were like panicking. I mean, they bring back every single player from that 2009 national championship, the key players like Greg McElroy, Julio Jones, Mark Ingram. They bring all those players back. They lose 3 games. And then in 2011, A.J. McCarron leads them to a national championship when they beat LSU in the BCS playoff and the BCS championship. And then in 2012, that was when they beat Georgia in the SEC championship. They just roll over Notre Dame, and Eddie Lacy was just bulldozing his way. And then back-to-back national championships. If it wasn't for the kick 6 in 2013, Alabama's 3-peating. I'm telling you, Alabama beats Florida State and Jameis Winston in that national championship. Kind of fell off in 2014. They lose to Ohio State in the college football playoff. Blake Sims is now your quarterback, but Lane Kiffin is now the offensive coordinator. And then in 2015, we know about probably the greatest coaching staff in college football history. Lane Kiffin was your offensive coordinator. Kirby Smart was your defensive coordinator. They had Mario Cristobal, Billy Napier, Mel Tucker. They had Dan Lanning. This was the dream team of coaches in 2015. 2016, they lose to Clemson. They win the national championship in 17. They lose to Clemson again in 2018. Alabama's been through some rocky points, but they were always in contention for the national championship in that entire 2010s under Nick Saban. And now I don't think they're a college football playoff team because I think that they're going to finish 8-4. And that, I know that's a hot take, but it's my hot take and I'm sticking to it. And I know Alabama fans can get mad at me all they want. But hey, I spent the first 20 minutes of the show talking about these 2 top games because these were really fresh on my mind. I will get into the college football playoff projection later on in the show. But let's go ahead and dive real quick into these games. Auburn, they blow another game. Wow. They have this game won. Auburn ends up losing to Missouri. And I loved what Peyton Thorne did, that touchdown pass to Cam Coleman. Auburn just firing on all cylinders. I think, wow, they're going to actually get a win. I mean, I think that when Brady Cook left the game, I know that it seemed like Missouri was not going to win this game. And when Brady Cook came back, it fired up the crowd in Columbia. It allowed Missouri to feel, hey, we've got the better quarterback. We could come back. And they put up 15 points in that 4th quarter. Auburn was going into the 4th quarter, and they were leading 17-6. And that just goes to show when you have a competent quarterback, because Missouri has the better quarterback. I still am not a believer in Peyton Thorne. I never have. I thought that Auburn had a very talented defense. Now, Peyton Thorne didn't make the big mistake, but Auburn let one slip away, and they are now 2-5. I'm not saying it's time to fire Hugh Freeze. There is something missing on the Plains, and I think it's the line play. You need to go into the transfer portal. You need to get some talented D-line. You need to go and recruit D-line and offensive line because it's the line play that really is going to determine if, quarterbacks, whether it's Hank Brown or Peyton Thorne or if it's that new quarterback that got flipped, and I think that Auburn needs to go back to the drawing board. I think that this year is just going to be like one of those years. Remember when Gene Chizik finished 3-9? It's going to be one of those years. I don't see Auburn making it to a bowl game. I don't see them even getting 4 wins. I mean, this has been a disaster of a season for the Auburn Tigers. There was a lot of high hopes for Auburn because it's Hugh Freeze's second year. I think he put way too much trust in Peyton Thorne. Just because, Peyton Thorne had the accolades. He was a 3-year starter at Michigan State. He's a 5th-year senior, but you have to go with the more talented quarterback. You should have gave Hank Brown reps in training camp going into the season, and Hank Brown should have been your week 1 starter. I mean, I think that Hugh Freeze just put way too much stock on Peyton Thorne, and he thought, well, if Peyton Thorne had weapons, that Auburn would be great, and that's just not the case. Peyton Thorne was losing games. He didn't lose this one. It was just that Brady Cook is fantastic, and he led Missouri in that comeback, and they end up beating Auburn. I can't believe it. Again, another game that Auburn let slip away, and now they're 2-5. I wasn't really shocked about this outcome. South Carolina is starting to become really good. Oklahoma is just not ready for the SEC. Whether it's Jackson Arnold, who got rid of his red shirt and he's coming back in, or if it's Hawkins, it doesn't really matter. Oklahoma is going to be in for a long season. They go to Ole Miss next. I still think, they'll lose to Alabama in Norman. There's some games on that schedule where if Oklahoma goes to 6-6, I mean, that's great for Oklahoma. They might not even make it to a bowl game. This Oklahoma team is not ready for the SEC. I think that they wanted to come along with Texas. When Texas got the invite to the SEC, I think that they invited both of them simultaneously. I just think that it was like a deal. You got to put 2 teams in the SEC. Why not Oklahoma, Texas's rival? But yeah, this is not looking good for Oklahoma. LSU, I think LSU, it can win the SEC. Grant Nussmeier is starting to look fantastic. This was a road game. This was one of my games on Upset Alert. LSU beats Arkansas in Fayetteville on the road. I'm impressed with LSU. After losing that first game to USC, they have not skipped a beat. I do believe that they beat Alabama in Death Valley. I do believe that. And LSU, we'll see where I have them in my college football playoff projections. This was a noon game. I felt like this was a trap game. I also had this game as an upset alert game. Miami getting ready for Florida State next week, which, by the way, they're just going to steamroll Florida State next week. Miami, Cam Ward, still the Heisman favorite. Miami could possibly go undefeated and make it to the college football playoff, win the ACC. That's what I am projecting for the Miami Hurricanes. So let's go ahead and hang on one second. Florida ends up defeating Kentucky 48-20. Great win for Billy Napier. I think he keeps his job a little bit longer. Florida's got a bye, but I tell you what, if they can beat Georgia next week, that would just be fantastic if they are able to get that win. All right. Very disappointing loss to Notre Dame by Georgia Tech. This was at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. I thought Georgia Tech could possibly win the game, but when I found out that Haynes King wasn't playing, I realized I think that Notre Dame is going to end up winning this game. And that's what they did there. Yeah, I'm running through these pretty fast because we only have an hour. I took 20 minutes on the Georgia, Texas, Alabama, Tennessee games. I mean, come on. Colorado, I think they're going to go to a bowl game. I'm shocked they're not ranked. 28-7 over the Arizona Wildcats. USC is a team that is free falling. They're just not ready for the Big Ten. They struggled and they lose a 1-point game to Maryland. I mean, these are unacceptable losses. You lose to Minnesota and you lose to Maryland. I get losing to Penn State because Penn State is a top 5 team. But, yeah, tough loss. Keeping it local here in Georgia. Georgia Southern, a big win over James Madison. I think Georgia Southern can make it to a bowl game. And then finally, you got Mercer. They fall their first loss of the season. They lose to Samford. And I still think Mercer, which, by the way, will play Alabama later in the season. Mercer having a great season. Some other games I do want to talk about. How about LaGrange College? They end up getting their second road victory of the season. I'm excited about that. That's the first time that LaGrange College has had 3 wins since 2017. So congratulations to LaGrange College. They do play next week. They have their homecoming game. I would love to just support the LaGrange College Panthers and just go to a game. I mean, I think that would be pretty cool. All right. Without further ado, now I'm not going to take a break. Without further ado, it's time for your college football playoff projection. I love doing this. Every Monday, I give you my college football playoff projection. There it is. I hope you like it. Some changes, obviously, with Georgia beating Texas. Now I think that Georgia is in the driver's seat to not only make the college football playoff, but win the SEC. Paul Feinbaum said that Georgia is the only team that can afford to have 3 losses and make the college football playoff. I don't necessarily believe that. I believe that the threshold is 2 losses. Georgia can lose 1 more game, maybe to Ole Miss, maybe to Tennessee. They could possibly lose in the SEC title game, still make the college football playoff. I think that 2 losses is going to be where everybody's going to be. I think 3 losses puts you out of this thing. But we will find out when the College Football Playoff Committee has their selection show. They're going to do it like we do every week. They're going to have, okay, your non-power 5 team, your group of 5 team, that is going to be, this. So basically, I put Liberty. I've been putting like Boise State. I had UNLV one time. I put Liberty instead of Boise State because I believe Boise State's going to lose to UNLV on Friday. Liberty is still undefeated. They play Kennesaw State on a Wednesday night, a rare Wednesday night college football game at Fifth Third Bank Stadium up there in Kennesaw, Georgia. Kennesaw State's having a very tough year in their first season in the FBS. Got Liberty playing Texas. Notre Dame's back in this thing after beating Georgia Tech. I think that the committee is going to overlook that Northern Illinois loss and know that Notre Dame's just had a bad game, but they're having a terrific season. I got them playing Tennessee. I got Clemson and Penn State. I got Ohio State and LSU. My top 4, the only change is I got Georgia at number 2. Miami and Ohio and Iowa State are still holding strong. Quarterfinals predictions. We got some incredible matchups. I hope this happens. Ohio State and Oregon, Penn State and Georgia, Tennessee and Miami. I got Texas and Iowa State. My semifinal predictions, Texas and Oregon, Miami and Georgia. I know my family would like that matchup. All my family members on my wife's side are huge Miami fans. Big shout out to Ryan Frederick. And I just think that would be an awesome matchup because we've never really gotten to see this since, maybe the 1960s. And then my national championship prediction is going to be Georgia beating Oregon. Which you're saying that Oregon's going to beat Texas? I actually think Oregon right now is the AP number 1 in the country. Oregon is playing fantastic. I think that Oregon, it could get to the national championship, but when you're facing Georgia, that is tough. That really is tough. I'm telling you. I enjoy doing that. All right, I'm going to go and take a break. When we come back, I'm going to have my NFL reaction show. You don't want to go anywhere. It's a Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge, presented by Georgia Alabama Sports Live. We'll be right back after this.
Introducing Gatorade Water. Alkaline and electrolyte infused for great taste. Gatorade Water, always in motion.
And welcome back to the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge, presented by Georgia Alabama Sports Live. Let's get into the NFL reaction here on the show. We're going to start with the Atlanta Falcons dropping just a tough game to the Seattle Seahawks, 34-14. That Seahawks defense was spectacular. Kirk Cousins throws 2 interceptions. And my thought on this game was that the Seahawks looked incredible. Geno Smith had 2 touchdown passes. He didn't really feel under duress. And sometimes Geno Smith will play this way because he does have weapons. DK Metcalf is a weapon. And I thought that A.J. Terrell, even though he had an okay game, DK Metcalf had just a sensational game. That pass, when it was a 3rd and 13, and he ended up getting it with 4 seconds left to go before the half. That was the Seahawks being aggressive. They're up 10-7, and I thought maybe the Falcons would hold them to a field goal. It would be 13-7 going into the half because the Falcons will get the ball to start the second half. And when you go up 17-7, okay, now you can do what you want to do offensively. And Kirk Cousins throws that pass to Drake London to cut it to 17-14. And then the Seahawks getting aggressive. The Kenneth Walker incredible catch to go up 24-14. I think that was a little too much for the Atlanta Falcons to try to make their comeback because Kirk Cousins was just in duress. The missed field goal, I mean, that was a big miscue by the Falcons. The Falcons didn't look sharp on offense. When you have a hot offense like the Seahawks and Geno Smith was rolling, Kirk Cousins is going to have to match him toe-to-toe. I did feel if the Falcons got in a position where they had a chance to win the game, then Kirk Cousins would probably get the job done. But the fumble touchdown, you're down 24-14. The fumble touchdown really put it away. And then they throw an interception. Kirk Cousins, an interception, another interception. Here's was the last 3 drives. I'm not going to count the one where, it was into the game. Interception, fumble touchdown by the Seahawks defense. That is a defense that can close out a football game. And the Seahawks end up getting the win. They snap a 3-game losing streak, and now they are on top of the NFC West. By the way, the Buccaneers do play the Baltimore Ravens tonight. The Falcons could still be in first place after tonight, but the Atlanta Falcons have a huge showdown against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers next week, and that would be for the division. All right, let's move on, and let's go ahead and talk about the rematch of the Super Bowl. Not a good day if you're a 49ers fan. In fact, the 49ers defense actually played very well in that first half. I thought that the 49ers defense, they put Patrick Mahomes in duress. I think if there is a weakness for this Kansas City Chiefs team, it is their tackles. Nick Bosa had an incredible game, but it was just too much of that Chiefs defense that made Brock Purdy look terrible. Brock Purdy with 3 interceptions. They had a stat. Anytime Brock Purdy has a turnover, they're 6-8. He's undefeated when he does not turn the ball over. So that is the key ingredient. That defense went after Brock Purdy. And when you don't have all your weapons, because pretty much they had all their weapons out. Christian McCaffrey, Jawan Jennings, Brandon Ayuk, he may be gone for the season because he might have a torn ACL. Deebo Samuel was not feeling well. He was under the weather, and he didn't play that much. George Kittle was their only weapon, and the Chiefs feasted on that, and they end up pulling out the 28-18 victory because Patrick Mahomes was spectacular when he had to. He's having a down season statistically. This was the most rushing yards he's had in the game this year is because the 49ers coverage was great. And the Chiefs, they don't have any wide receivers. I don't want to hear excuses about injuries because the Chiefs lost Juju Smith-Schuster in the beginning of the game. They don't have Rashid Rice. They don't have Hollywood Brown. Travis Kelce is not the same tight end that he's been. Noah Gray had a good game because I guess the 49ers didn't account for him. And I was watching this game because I'm a 49ers fan, but I'm a realist. I know that Andy Reid is automatic coming off a bye. He was coming into this game 21-3 coming off a bye. And so I knew the Chiefs were the better team. This was automatic. How did you install the 49ers as a 2-point favorite? That's beyond me. The 49ers are in trouble. They are 3-4. I do think this is a very winnable division. I do believe they're going to get Christian McCaffrey back. Brandon Ayuk probably gone for the season. That is huge. And you paid them all that money. That's one of those, if you're a 49ers fan, you got to think, okay, let's hope that they hit on Ricky Pearsall. By the way, great emotional moment for Ricky Pearsall to get his first NFL catch. He got a standing ovation. Remember, 50 days ago, he was shot and he almost lost his life in a robbery attempt. So I think that was great. And I wanted to see kind of the 49ers rookies just continue to develop. 14-12, all right? Here is the score. The 49ers had the ball. They cut it to 14-12. They missed the extra point. They get the ball back, and Brock Purdy throws a bonehead interception. That's really been the story of Brock Purdy when he doesn't have his weapons. And the Chiefs were able to get those 2 touchdowns, go up 28-12. I knew it was over. Once the Chiefs went up by 2 scores, I knew it was over. There was no way the 49ers can overcome that. And the Chiefs, when are they going to lose? Because I'm looking at the schedule. I think their toughest game is at Buffalo. That might be their only loss. They might go 16-1. The Kansas City Chiefs probably going to three-peat. And I know that there are teams in the AFC that could challenge the Chiefs, like the Baltimore Ravens. But I think this is going to be a year where the Chiefs make history and they three-peat. All right, the Sunday night game, it was really no game at all. The Pittsburgh Steelers just completely humiliated Aaron Rodgers and the Jets. And you're talking about a Jets team that got Devontae Adams back. You're talking about a Jets team that Hassan Reddick ended up ending his holdout, and he ends up signing. I don't know if he really played that much, but Breece Hall actually was fantastic in the receiving, 6 receptions for 103 yards, but Aaron Rodgers throws 2 picks, and they are 0-2 with their interim coach, Jeff Ulbrich. So that just tells you that it had nothing to do with coaching. Robert Saleh gets fired. Jeff Ulbrich, the interim coach, comes in, and the Jets are 0-2. This is just a laughing stock of a franchise who has not made the NFL playoffs since 2010. I think that it's not going to be a 40-year-old quarterback that's going to solve all your problems. And I know that the Jets front office thinks, well, if we can get Devontae Adams in here, a receiver he's familiar with, that maybe that he could end up having a good season. And then getting Hassan Reddick, that's going to be great too. But Devontae Adams only had 3 catches for 30 yards. I mean, not much of an impact. Hassan Reddick, I'm looking at the stats. Hassan Reddick didn't even play. I mean, he didn't even get in the game. So that wasn't an impact at all. Jets are 2-5, having a terrible year. Steelers go to 5-2, but they're very an uninspired 5-2. I'll look at the Steelers, and even though Russell Wilson actually was fantastic, he had a quarterback rating of over 109. I think because the Steelers feel that Russell Wilson going forward, I mean, he would have started over Justin Fields if he wasn't hurt. I think that is probably going to be the direction that Mike Tomlin and the Steelers want to go. They're 5-2. I think the Steelers, great win for them. Let's go ahead and go through some of the other games. The Detroit Lions, are they not the best team in the NFC? I actually think the Detroit Lions could challenge the Kansas City Chiefs because they have a great offensive line. The loss for Aiden Hutchinson, that is going to be tough. I think that could be a huge factor, especially when they get into the playoffs. Hopefully, he might be back in time for the postseason. I'm saying the Detroit Lions are my favorite to win the NFC and represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. I kind of was hoping for that for Lions fans last year, but I had to root for my 49ers in the NFC Championship. This Lions team is the best team, but this division is the best division in football. The Minnesota Vikings, they lose their first game of the season, and then when you look you got the Green Bay Packers coming out of nowhere. And let me try to get that score update. Yeah, the Green Bay Packers end up defeating the Houston Texans 24-22. And so now Jordan Love is starting to look like an MVP candidate. This was just a fantastic matchup between two teams that are great. And the Green Bay Packers able to get the win. Other scores around the league. The Washington Commanders ended up defeating the Carolina Panthers, but it came at a price because Jaden Daniels ends up having a rib injury. Marcus Mariota comes in relief. The Commanders are 5-2. But if you don't have your quarterback, and especially with the Eagles starting to become really good, we don't know about how good the Cowboys are going to be. Maybe the Commanders might have hit their ceiling if Jaden Daniels can't go. If Jaden Daniels can go, then I think that the Washington Commanders are a playoff team and they win this division. All right, let's go ahead and go through. How about those Philadelphia Eagles as the homecoming for Saquon Barkley? It turns out very good for the Philadelphia Eagles, which I thought that because they're playing the Giants on the road, and the Eagles have really been a lame duck team so far this year with Nick Sirianni, questionable at best. The Eagles actually turned the corner, and they had a very complete game. Maybe it's just the incompetency from the New York Giants. That Daniel Jones looked awful. He didn't even pass for over 100 yards. Saquon Barkley has been the best free agent acquisition so far this season, 176 yards and a touchdown. If the Eagles continue winning, I think Saquon Barkley can win the MVP because he is having just a phenomenal year. The Buffalo Bills having a great season as well. They're able to beat the Tennessee Titans 34-10 in the debut of Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper comes out and has a very good game as Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills are rolling. They are now 5-2, and they are one of the top teams in the AFC that I think that could challenge the Kansas City Chiefs. All right, the London game, Doug Peterson might have saved his job another week. The Jacksonville Jaguars end up beating the New England Patriots. I saw some good positive signs with Drake May, but he just doesn't have any talent around him. But how about Callaway's Tank Bigsby? Have yourself a game as Tank rushed for 26 carries, 118 yards, and 2 touchdowns as the former Auburn Tiger running back and former Callaway Cavalier is just tearing up this league. And what a great performance by Tank Bigsby. Going around the NFL, we've got the Indianapolis Colts welcoming back Anthony Richardson. Don't look now. The Colts are 4-3. I think the Colts could be a team that could possibly sneak into the playoffs this year. And then the Los Angeles Rams, they're just trying to get everybody back healthy because they still are banged up. The Rams defense looked incredible. And I think because the Raiders were just awful. Gardner Minshew had 3 interceptions. Not a good day for Gardner Minshew. The Rams win in a game. They're 2-4. They don't have Cooper Kupp or Puka Nacua yet. They play the Vikings on Thursday night in a primetime game. That's actually a pretty good game. And then they will travel to the Pacific Northwest to take on the Seattle Seahawks. They got an easy schedule. Could the Rams end up making a push? Because right now, the way the 49ers are depleted, I think the Rams might be the best team in this division. And I honestly think that. All right. A lot of stuff. I want to see and make sure that I got all the games. Pretty much covered all the games. We do have a doubleheader tonight in Monday Night Football. The Baltimore Ravens and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And then we have the Arizona Cardinals hosting the Los Angeles Chargers. So that's going to be pretty cool to have 2 Monday Night Football games. A couple of notes before I close the show. We've had some high school football over the weekend. I will have my high school football scoreboard show. On tomorrow's show, you can catch it on Georgia Alabama Sports Live's Facebook page and YouTube channel. The River Dragons are 2-0 on the season. They ended up getting the 1-0 victory in overtime against the Monroe Moccasins as Nolan Shaletta ends up scoring the first goal of the season. They outshot Monroe 29-18. They turn around and they defeat Monroe on Saturday, 2-1. So they are 2-0 on the season. Alex Storjahan ended up having a goal in that game. And Columbus is going to have a long break because their home opener is November the 1st at the Columbus Civic Center, where they will take on the Mississippi Sea Wolves. Columbus State Soccer is now 11-0-1 after getting the 3-0 victory over South Carolina Aiken. The leading goal scorer is Emma Badeau with 7 goals. Their next home game is going to be at the Walden Soccer Complex this Wednesday at 6 p.m. against their in-state rival, Georgia Southwest State. And a familiar face, the former Columbus Rapids head coach, Miguel Galindo, who's one of the coaches on the Georgia Southwest State team, makes his return to Columbus, as he was a longtime assistant under Coach Jay Intlick. By the way, one of the assistant coaches on Coach Intlick's staff is none other than Rita Icarin, the former Columbus Rapid and current Columbus United FC player. So a big shout out to Rita, and had him on the Ivy show. He's a great guy and a great soccer player too. He's also an assistant coach. I think that's outstanding. And good luck, as I know that the Columbus State women's soccer team is poised to make another national championship run. Well, this has really been a fun show. I do want to say that anything that I did not touch up on the show, I will try to get on the Scoreboard show tomorrow. I do subscribe to the Georgia High School Football Daily, so I do talk high school football, and we do have those rankings. We've got some softball games coming up. Columbus, Northside, Harris County, all in the Elite Eight, or all in the Sweet 16. They're in the second round. They win, they go to the Elite Eight, where the South Common Softball Complex, that's where the softball championships are going to be, starting October the 30th. And then the Columbus Lady Blue Devils volleyball team is in the Elite Eight, as they will take on Coachella Creek on Tuesday. That will be at 5 o'clock at Columbus High School. Well, this has been fun. Thank you so much for tuning in to another edition of the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge. Signing off. Don't forget, you can like and subscribe to the Facebook page. I also have a YouTube channel. I'm also found on Instagram. I'm found on the X, or you can catch a rebroadcast of the show on WQEE 99.1 every Monday through Friday from 2 to 3. And you can also listen to the show. I'm found on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcasts. I do want to say a couple of things before I do close the show, because what I do is not easy. I know that my love for sports went all the way back to my days when I was living up in the North Metro Atlanta area, and I was doing a YouTube channel back in 2009. I started this because somebody at work just asked me, why don't you do sports broadcasting? Because I don't know if I just let sports broadcasting pass me by. I had opportunities that did fall my way because I was actively applying at just about every radio station. I go into the spill after I graduated from college. I would just go apply at all these different radio stations, TV stations. But the industry has changed. You don't have to work at a place that has call letters. You could work at a live streaming company like Georgia Alabama Sports Live. And that's why I'm glad that I've had this partnership with Thrift Behringer for the last 2 years. But my thing is that I tried to build my brand, but it was more about wanting to talk about sports and being comfortable in front of the camera, building up that experience. Well, that YouTube channel didn't really go anywhere. And then I moved to Columbus in 2015. Didn't know that there was any opportunities to do sports broadcasting at all. I knew the field was competitive, but you've got to brand yourself and you got to put yourself above and beyond all the other competitors out there, because there's a lot of people that are doing podcasts, that they're actually doing YouTube channels, and they are getting experience too. But you just got to take everything you learned, the knowledge you've built up, the networking, the friends along the way, because I couldn't have done this without, the other producers like Chris Gates, Toygar, Brandon Schwobel, and really Thrift Behringer for giving me that opportunity at Georgia Alabama Sports Live, because, I was the voice of the Columbus Rapids. Coach Jason Gibson did discover me when we were on the radio station at 95.7 back in 2020, knew I had some sports knowledge, some broadcasting background, and a passion for sports. So he gave me that chance exactly almost 3 years ago to this day. It actually, in a couple months, it will be the 3-year anniversary when Coach Jason Gibson called me up and asked me if I wanted to be the play-by-play announcer for the Columbus Rapids. And that was a no-brainer. Even though soccer wasn't my expertise, I couldn't turn down an opportunity like that. So I called the Columbus Rapids for 2 years. That allowed me to get discovered by Thrift Behringer. And we've had a great partnership at Georgia Alabama Sports Live. Before that, I also did games for the Columbus Lions. And then I did a high school football game of the week for CTV Bean and the CW Jabama. And so I've had some opportunities. I've called Columbus State Soccer. I've called the Columbus Chattahoochee, the Chattahoochee Monsters. I want to thank Tom Callahan for giving me that opportunity to call baseball. It was a lifelong dream of mine when I was a kid to be a play-by-play announcer for a minor league baseball team, and that was the next best thing. I hope, and I don't know if it's even a possibility, that I could be involved with the Columbus Cleanstones when they come to Synovus Park on April the 15th. But I do want to talk about them on my podcast. I would love to interview the coach, would love to interview players. I think we can make that happen, especially on Georgia Alabama Sports Live. It's been a fantastic weekend. I want to thank Brett Taylor, Tony Morgan for just giving me that opportunity to help Thrift Behringer out calling the softball championships at the South Commons Softball Complex. Congratulations to all the champions. We had Citizens Christian. They ended up winning the single A. We had Westfield School ended up winning the triple A. Southwest Georgia Academy won the double A. And Tatnall Square won the 4A. So it's been a lot of fun. Don't forget, tomorrow's show on Tuesday at noon. Thank you once again for watching, and we will see you next time.